guys, so today I'm in my kitchen and I wanted to show you how I like to preserve our cherry tomatoes. With cherry tomatoes, you have to go out and pretty much pick daily at a certain point, and if you don't, they'll end up cracking. I think I just threw out the one I had found, but they'll crack because the sun will cause them to crack. You got to pick them literally every day. And then once they're in the house, they get soft pretty quickly, so you want to try to use them as quickly as you can. Obviously, I prefer to use them fresh, but at this point, I have so many. So we're going to make some oven roasted tomatoes today. Okay, so I've washed the tomatoes, they're ready to be cut, but before I do that, I wanted to go over just some things that I have learned, specifically from Joey, working in a kitchen and bringing home skills and me observing and asking, cutting. So many people cut wrong, and it's kind of funny because it drives me nuts even though I used to do the same thing. So I thought I would share some of the tips that I have learned. So first off is cutting boards. Most of them don't have anything that sticks to the base of what you're cutting on. So when you're cutting, you risk cutting your fingers because there's a lot of slipping and sliding. So there are two ways you can do it. We used to just get a paper towel, wet it, put it underneath, and there you go. It will not slide. Take the time to do it. Your cuts will be more efficient and much safer. Another way is you can buy them online. It's just basically a silicone rubber cross, and you just set your cutting board on there and it's not going anywhere. So whether you use either one, I highly recommend it. It makes a difference in how you cut. Another thing is I used to always feel more confident with a tiny knife. I would use the same one, and that's what I used. Don't be afraid of big knives. Let's see if I can. We have quite the collection here. My favorite knife right now is this guy. I would have never used this before I met Joey, but with some tips that he taught me, I feel a lot more confident using these. Another thing you'll see here that I use often when cutting is called a bench scraper, and this is also used, I think, for baking, cutting the dough, separating the amounts. But specifically with cutting here, it's easy to scoop, and my pot's back there or whatever I'm cooking in. It just makes life easier. So I always have my bench scraper to the side and then my knife. So when you're cutting, you always want to make sure you have your fingers bent so that when you're cutting, you're never gonna get your finger. You'll be safe always. Another tip is this took me a while, but when you cut, you wanna leave the tip down and you just kind of rock. So the only thing you're doing is moving over. So that's pretty much it. Once you learn those tips, you have your secure cutting board, you have a good knife, which needs to be sharpened often. I never used to sharpen my tiny little knife. Sharpen your knife, you'll be good to go. So let's get started with cutting some tomatoes. I prefer, it's just like a whole nother level. It's like, the depth of heirloom tomatoes is so good. Like last night we went and Joey got a new truck. So we were all excited and we went to celebrate. We went to a restaurant and I got just a simple grilled chicken sandwich, but they had thick slices of tomato on there. And I knew it was going to be like a thing that I would think in my head, but I was trying not to judge. And of course I ate into it and I'm like, wow, this is an awful tomato. This has zero flavor, and it's truly what you buy at the grocery store. It is such a world of difference eating heirloom tomatoes. Okay, that's my rant. I'm gonna go ahead and finish cutting these and then I will show you the next step. Okay, so I've added some garlic cloves. I'm going to add some thyme. Right now I have some growing in the garden. I just haven't gotten out to dry it, so this is just from the store. Okay, so here I have some basil from the garden that I've dehydrated. What I've learned with reading about herbs is when you store them, you want to store them in full actual leaves. The moment you grind it down and let it sit on your shelf, the benefits of basil, the actual benefits in the powder, are going to dissipate quicker. So if you keep them in this full form and then grind them down, you know, maybe have a little jar of it, just a little, and as it disappears, and you know, you'd get this and grind it up more. But you're keeping the potency a little higher. Another thing I want to point out that I've learned is, if you look at this basil, when I first tried it out, I'm like, wow, this is nothing like what you buy at the store. It's still really green. Am I not doing it long enough? And you want all your herbs to be green. They say to check them every 6 months. If any of your herbs are brown, throw them out, go buy fresh or go buy new ones. You want them to be green. If you're eating any brown herbs in your kitchen, then you're not getting any health benefits. So I am using dehydrated full leaves, breaking it down, and I'm gonna add a lot because I love basil. And then lastly, I'm going to add some Celtic salt. If you're eating Morton salt, that is filled with chemicals. That is the worst salt you can eat for yourself. And I have been eating this type of salt for a very long time. You either want to eat gray Celtic salt. I have the fine one here. I also have the thicker chunks for my tomato slices when I eat them fresh. But it has so much more health benefits for you. You can just Google that and look for yourself. But the other type of salt we'll eat is pink Himalayan sea salt. So this is the other kind that we'll use. But today I'm going to use the ground gray Celtic salt and be generous. Next, I'm going to add some of the oil. And I've already preheated the oven to 225. So I'll stick this in the oven and I'll show you guys what it's gonna look like in a couple hours. The smell in the house is phenomenal. I'm going to stir them up and reposition them and give them a little time to shrivel up even more. Okay, so I put them in little jars. I like to use the smaller ones. So if you look inside, you can see the caramelized tomatoes with the thyme, the basil, and the caramelized garlic. It smells delightful. So now what I'll do is I'm going to top it with some Sicilian olive oil. So you want it to look something like this. You get a spoon and you just push down all of the roasted tomatoes, and it should look like this. Clean the rim with a napkin, and then we'll go ahead and put the lids on. And there you have it. You have oven roasted tomatoes and olive oil. You can use it for oil for cooking, on salads. You can use it on cute little crostini breads when you have a picnic. You can use it really in any dish. It's just something that you always want to have in the refrigerator. I believe it stores for 2 weeks in the fridge, which is why I use the smaller one so I can use it up. Or if you freeze it, you can freeze it for up to 4 weeks, and then you can put it in the fridge and it's good for another 2. Thank you guys for joining me and making my oven roasted tomatoes. It's a great way to preserve your tomato harvest and capture the heirloom taste of tomatoes so that I can enjoy it when we don't have a harvest anymore. I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and toodaloo.